Okay, I think it's 3:30, so let's get started. Good afternoon and welcome everybody to the Development Permit Panel on August 9, 2023. First, I'll introduce the panel. We have Mr. James Cooper, Director of Building Permits, and Peter Russell, Director of Sustainability and District Energy, and I'm Cecilia Sham, General Manager of Community Safety. We have Miss Suzanne Smith with us today, and and a couple of other staff from planning as well to answer questions and whatnot. Just to reiterate to those who are joining us, the panel deals with form and character of the development. We do not deal with zoning or land use that has already been dealt with by council during the rezoning process. So what we deal with is things to do with parking, access, lighting, architecture, landscape architecture, that kind of things. So I will first turn to the agenda, adoption of minutes. If somebody could move it. Move the adoption, please.
So moved.
Second it, yes. Consider, sorry. Yeah, any omissions or changes? Hearing none, I will consider the minutes adopted. And then today we have one item with us, and it's for and location at 10140 to 10180 number 1 road and 4051 Cavendish Drive. And the applicant is a Panache Group. And so I will turn it to the applicants for their presentation, and whoever wants to start the presentation can share their screen, please.
David, I think you're on mute right now. Do you want to just give a quick intro?
Yes, thank you. That was a classic move. Thanks. Well, while our architect brings the presentation up, I'll just give a brief introduction. My name is David Jacobson. I represent the Panache Group, the developer. It's good to see some familiar faces. I haven't done a project in Richmond for a while, but it's nice to see the folks that I used to work with are still there. So I'm looking forward to engaging further with you. With us today, we have Kush Panache from the Panache Group. Taizo Yamamoto will be doing the architectural presentation, and Mary Chan Yip, our landscape architect. Just a little bit of a history for you. We acquired the site just over 2 years ago. Another group had taken it the majority of the way through rezoning. And we've actually spent the last 2 years since then actually refining the design with planning staff to make sure that this really represented something that the Panache Group could be proud of, as well as make sure that this fit well in this established neighborhood and provide an alternative form of housing to the single-family house. Of the 35 grind-oriented townhomes that we are proposing to construct, 6 of them will be low-end market rental units. And they will all be designed to be convertible. And then we have another 4 market townhome units that will also be convertible. 4 of the homes do have secondary suites, which will help with extended families and mortgage helpers. On site, we've actually made quite a bit of effort to celebrate the retained trees, which are central to the courtyard. We've incorporated them into the amenity areas, and our team will speak to that a little further. We're also more than doubling the required outdoor amenity space that the typical project would expect to see, and dedicated 60% of that to children's play space. And the whole project is designed to meet BC Step Code Level 3 with a low carbon energy system, and all of the homes will have EV charging as well. In addition to all of these on-site features, there's also a significant investment that we're making in dedicated public infrastructure as part of servicing the property. And Taizo and Mary will speak a little further to that. But this site really does connect number 1 road to the neighborhood to the east through some significant reintegration of throughways and such. So we're happy to have your questions as they come up. I'm very happy to be here, and I'll hand it over to Taizo and Mary. Thank you.
Kush, before Taizo speaks, if I can just say a couple of words.
Please go ahead.
Thank you. No, I just wanted to make a general comment that, as you know, we've done a number of townhouse projects in Richmond, and I can honestly tell you, and I think the team is kind of tired of me, I'll be very honest with you. We've really pushed everyone to pretty well, I think I can shamelessly say that hopefully this will set a new benchmark for townhouses in Richmond. I mean, I can't recall a townhouse project where we fussed over details and stuff so much to really, I think, create something that we can all really be proud of. And one of the other elements I wanted to mention is because the complex does include 6 affordable units, we've gone to great lengths to make sure those 6 homes are not recognized or differentiated in any way from the market townhouses. They're being finished to the same standards and they're being treated just like the market townhouses. So that's really, really important for me because I'm a big believer in integration. If you're going to create these affordable homes, those people should be respected and they're treated the same way as everyone else. I'll leave the rest of the team to speak to the technical merits and all the other wonderful work they've done, but I can tell you that a lot of great effort has gone into it. A lot of the details that you see on. Thank you.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. So just to highlight the key focal point of the site is the preserved trees that are in the center of the site and form one of the central amenity areas. Number 1 road on the left side of the drawing and then Cavendish on the right. And another unique feature here is the reconnection of Cavendish as an emergency access only, but it does provide pedestrian linkages and an amenity space in a way for the community. The other part to highlight is the connection of the pedestrian walkway through from Cavendish to number 1. So the project really improves the connectivity through the site for the neighborhood. This site plan also shows the location of convertible housing, affordable housing in this location and convertible housing in this location. And there's also some lock-off suites within this zone. So a real diversity of housing typologies provided. This is another highlight of the amenity areas, the one focal point central area with the large trees and another secondary amenity space here. And then in some ways, the road surface itself can be an amenity for the community. This diagram just gives us an overview of building heights. So we've been mindful of the adjacency to single family on Cavendish with the 2.5-story expression and a more of a single family home character towards the single family, and then stepping down buildings from 3 to 2 stories to address single family adjacencies on the corners. The south edge does create a larger setback as a result of pedestrian walkway and SRW along that southern edge. So this is just kind of an overlay showing the pedestrian circulation routes through the site and sort of a hierarchy of the public zones and the more private zones that provide access, with the goal of having all of the units having individual private front doors onto pedestrian routes. A lot of open space for each of the units throughout the site. And this just gives an overview of the heights and the increasing height towards number 1 with a more 3-story street wall expression versus the smaller scale towards Cavendish and the single family, and then the central amenity space at the heart of the development. And then I'll hand it over to Mary for an overview of the landscape.
Thank you, Taizo. The landscape design has been developed to generate a garden landscape with the use of diverse palette of plant material to offer color and texture throughout the seasons, while offering benefits to habitat, including birds and pollinators. Given the fact that we have townhomes to the south of us and single family to the east of us, we wanted to pick species and palette that would complement the neighboring landscapes to the homes around us. Along number 1 road and Cavendish Drive, both streetscapes are reinforced with a strong green edge to provide separation between the public realm and the private realm. A double row of street trees is proposed along the street boulevard, one along the curb and the sidewalk on the frontage of number 1 road, and the secondary road in front of the townhomes along the street edge. This allows the pedestrian to be pulled away from the street edge and provide a comfortable walking zone to move safely along the frontage of number 1 road. A continuous broadleaf evergreen hedge, a 42-inch high metal fence, and some accent grasses and shrub and ground cover contribute to this green edge. At the south edge of the site is a 3-meter tree-lined publicly accessible pedestrian walkway. This landscape walkway will be lit to allow for safe movement between number 1 road and Cavendish Drive. This is not a private walkway, but allows the single-family neighborhood to travel to number 1 road or kids from number 1 road down Cavendish to the school further to the south of us. As mentioned by Taizo and by David earlier, we have multiple levels of amenity offered throughout the site. All the homes have semi-private yards with a patio and a landscape yard. The private patios are large enough for a barbecue, table, chairs, or some lounge furniture, allowing the residents to have some of their own usable private outdoor space. The plantings within the private yards are selected to offer a more dynamic landscape for the homeowners. Species of planting offer flowering and seasonal interests. The canopy tree selection selected unify the street edge or the internal mews to allow a rhythm of alternating species so that we don't have monoculture throughout the site. There are 2 communal outdoor amenity spaces provided. One centrally located within the site with 2 very large retained trees. The 2 trees retained are a giant redwood and a Norway maple. In order to save these trees and minimize the potential root damage, we've been working with the consulting arborist, Arbortech, to develop a design to allow the 2 usage to coexist with the existing trees. A deck has been designed to span over the root zone to allow for intense use over this area without damaging the roots. The outdoor space is designed for neighborhood social interactions with opportunities for adults and children. For the children, we have play elements which include natural features such as boulders and balance logs. These offer creative opportunities for kids to use, as small children to use for climbing, to improve their balance and motor skills. For social interaction and imaginative play, within the deck itself, we have a playhouse and some movable blocks. Bench seating is offered for adults to supervise children while interacting with their neighbors. As the number of the play elements are designed more for younger children who move very quickly around the space, safe use of the space is a consideration. With that in mind and the proximity of the adjacent rows, we've used a combination of railing and landscaping to provide a barrier to prevent children from running onto the roadway. Along the north edge of this play area is the planting of small-scale trees and shrubs with a railing to provide the barrier. Along the eastern edge, we have provided plantings with no trees to not generate any conflict with the existing tree canopies that are being retained of the redwood and the Norway spruce. At the eastern edge of the site is the active children's play area, or the secondary play area. This is more designed towards kids for ages of 6 to 12. The play structures include a compound rocket, which allows for 4 kids to play at a time, and a compound hammock, which allows 2 children to play at a time. Benches are provided on each side of the play area to offer seating for the caregivers. Now, having said that, just because the manufacturer says it's geared for age 6 to 12, it is not. Trust me, I've been on these hammocks, and it's actually quite a challenge for adults to use these elements too, and it does help me work on my core. Can you flip back to one page? Flip back one, please, again? Yes, great, thank you. Despite having these various play areas for children, there's also a school park approximately 150 meters to the southeast along Cavendish Drive. Here, the features include a large sports field, basketball court, multi-purpose court, and a large playground. The neighborhood amenity can be used by the neighborhood after school hours. But within our site itself, beyond these 2 play areas, as Taizo had mentioned, we have the Cavendish Drive lane that's been closed off with ballers at either end. This allows for residents to use this space safely. They could bring in mobile badminton nets, hockey nets, and use that space safely for any form of recreational activity such as that. Within the site itself, in terms of pedestrian movement, all the homes are fed onto an accessible sidewalk along the street frontage of number 1 road, the east-west multi-use path along the south edge of our site, the internal northwest mews, and along Cavendish Drive. Within the internal roads, we are offering traffic calming by the use of decorative paving throughout at the entry crossing and at the central amenity space. Here, we're providing decorative pavers, which also double up for stormwater management, as these will be permeable pavers to allow for stormwater integration into the ground. In terms of site lighting, all the internal roads will be lit by downward wall mount lights on the garage doors. Baller lights will be offered along the internal mews, and pole lights along the east-west multi-use path at the south edge of the site, and this will be controlled by photocell, similar to what you would have on streetlights. On number 1 road and on Cavendish Road, we will have streetlights. In terms of sustainability, we've selected plantings in consideration of habitat, but species with low water demand. We do want the plants to stay healthy all year round, so and high-efficient irrigation system with smart controller and weather sensor will be designed to provide supplemental watering during extreme conditions. Deciduous trees, canopy trees are being planted along the west edge, the south edge, and the eastern edge to help gain
a bit more kind of material connection to all of the units and unify the soffits throughout the development. We've really tried hard to make sure the convertibility is working for the affordable units as well as the additional units, and ensure that there's the most available accessibility for all of the different unit types. Just some details about the plans that we don't necessarily need to get into. Streetscape-wise, there's one of the other challenges that we've had is to unify the expression throughout this development, even though we're dealing with very different context. So on number 1 road, it's a much kind of bigger scale street, busier street. The street wall can handle a bit more scale. And so we've done a 3-story, fairly simple street wall. However, the units are expressed with the vertical change in material and color. Versus Cavendish, it's a very different expression with more of a 2.5-story single family home type character, which responds to the single family scale, but also unifies with roof pitches with everything else that's happening throughout the site. So different conditions that are still trying to achieve a similar consistency throughout the development. So in terms of the communal spaces, the goal is really to orient these units around these communal spaces and really make them the heart of the development. And with the mature trees, there's sort of a connection to the history of the site and the kind of a longer term timeline than just the recently soon to be constructed townhouses. And I think that the design of the deck that integrates with the mature trees is quite a unique feature that allows people to get really close to those trees and experience it, while also having the most flexible uses. And then the opportunity along the eastern side with that large landscape boulevard, which creates a really great visual amenity and then increases the green space of the streetscape, even though it's a more pedestrian area. It gives both this development, but also the neighborhood, a lot of visual amenity and breathing room at that corner, and a great additional amenity space for the homeowners. And then this is the entry from Cavendish, which shows the very simple but elegant streetscape and different layers of detail and different scales of detail that we tried to carry out throughout the development. And that completes our presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I guess next will be staff comment. Ms. Smith.
Yes, thank you. Through the chair. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, this site, as mentioned, is part of a development that involves the extension of Cavendish Drive as that pedestrian connection. The project itself includes 35 units of townhouse development, including 6 low-end of market rental units secured with a housing agreement and 29 market units. This includes 10 convertible units with features to accommodate someone in a wheelchair in the future, 4 secondary suites, and there are no variances associated with the proposal. There are 2 bylaw-sized trees that will be retained on site, as mentioned, which is no change since the rezoning. 6 neighboring trees and 1 city tree will be protected, while 62 trees were removed. 66 replacement trees will be proposed on site with a mix of conifer and deciduous, with the remaining replacement trees provided through a contribution to the city's tree compensation fund. Servicing agreement will be required for this development, which includes frontage improvements to the number 1 road and the new Cavendish Drive connector as an emergency access and pedestrian pathway, the new public walkway along the south property line connecting number 1 road to Cavendish, and water, storm, sewer, and sanitary sewer upgrades. The project has also been designed to achieve step code level 3 with a low carbon energy system, including heat pumps, and also is proposed to be solar ready. I believe that concludes my comments.
Thank you. I'll start off with a couple of questions. One of them is, I noticed the panel received a package early on, which was superseded again. The property to the north of this site, the single-family home that is not actually part of this development. Just want to confirm that is the case, and secondly, that attempt has been made to do an assembly with the site.
Yes, through the chair, that is correct. The site to the north that was included in the map in error at 12120 number 1 road is not included as part of this development. The applicant, or the original applicant, did make efforts to acquire the site, to assemble it as part of the larger assembly, but it was not possible to acquire the site. As a result, there is both a concept plan on file to ensure that that site could be developed on its own in the future, and also a statutory right-of-way secured to connect to the site as part of this development.
Okay, thank you. And the other thing is, when you were going through your presentation, I did notice on your 3rd floor plan of your unit C1, there is quite a large attic space. I'm just wanting to see how that relates to your roof form. I think it's page 15 or 16 of your package, something like that. And if you want to share your package, that would be great as well. Yes, that attic space on 3rd floor of unit C1.
Right. So these are the units that are facing Cavendish, and so the goal is to incorporate the living space within the roof form and to preserve the 2.5-story roof form. And this space in the inward facing west will not be accessible. So the truss form will actually occupy this space. So we're carving out a small area within the attic form to provide additional bedroom at this top floor, but not affecting the overall roof form.
So it will read as a 3-story building, but the space is not accessible.
It will read, the goal is to have it read more like a 2.5-story building. Okay. So this is within the roof form of that 2.5 floor, 3rd level. That makes sense.
Yes, that does make sense. So it'll be a consistent roof without change in height of the roof. So it's not like a more dominant roof and then a more flattened roof, if you will.
Yeah, that's right. I can show you on the model photo. The goal is that it's contained within a single roof form, but the expression is 2.5 stories towards Cavendish.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you. That's my question. So I'll open up to other panel members if you have questions as well.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I had a number of questions. Maybe staff could clarify, or the developer could clarify, the ownership of the new lane. Is that going to be transferred to the city, or will the strata manage the new lane?
Yes, through the chair, that the new connector piece of Cavendish is secured through a right-of-way, so the city would retain the right of that. The access to it would be controlled with bollards at each end, and it will function mainly as a pedestrian connector, and then just for emergency access for fire, etc.
Okay, but the city owns it.
Through the chair, that's correct.
Okay, yeah. On the play area on the east side of the site, to the south of it, there's no sidewalk that connects to the adjacent site sidewalk that goes east. So maybe you could explain why. I noticed there's a big tree there. It appears off-site. Maybe you can look at the site plan if it's helpful.
Yes, through the chair to Mr. Russell. The design that you see there, there's no existing sidewalk on the along the north edge there of Cavendish. To the east, there's an actual sidewalk there, so the sidewalk connection really sort of starts with the pedestrian connector. I'm not explaining that well, but there's no existing sidewalk to continue. However, the design that's proposed on this site provides the opportunity for that pedestrian connection through that connector piece with the pavers.
Correct. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I guess I was wondering, just immediately, I guess, west of the smaller play area, if there's an...
I don't believe our team would have any issue providing a small connection there to avoid the erosion of the grass, certainly if that's a desire line. That on-site sidewalk was originally focused on making sure that we had fire access, firefighting access, and that was the result of the fire access calculation and measurement. But certainly if it becomes a more frequented route past the play structure to Cavendish, we would be happy to add a small piece of sidewalk, making that connection work.
And perhaps I can just leave that with staff and work that out with the applicant. It's a point of discussion. We're not going to make it a condition. Following Mr. Russell's questions, the east-west walkway, the pedestrian walkway, is it similar to the extension of Cavendish? It will become a city-owned property managed by the applicant?
Through the chair, yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, a few more questions. In the lane, are there any benches along the lane, the new laneway, for folks to sit and enjoy their new greenway, their new connection?
Through the chair, I don't believe there are any benches in that the Cavendish connector area. No. Someone can correct me if I'm mistaken, but I don't believe so.
Mary, do you mind confirming?
Oh, my apologies. No, there is no benches at this point in time along that connector. It was meant to be a pedestrian walkway that's dedicated to the city inventory. If Parks would like some benches, most definitely we can offer some benches. That is not as part of servicing agreement, we're finishing it off anyway, so we don't have any concerns if we're adding some benches on there. But at this point in time, there is none.
Okay, thank you. Again, I think I will leave it to Parks to decide whether they want to put benches there and to maintain it. And wearing my hat for SEPTAT, it may or may not be a desirable thing. I do appreciate that there's lighting there for safety. So.
And I just one last final question. Well, actually, two questions. In the image, it looked like there's a small building in that new amenity area to the west. Did I read that correctly in some of the plans?
Yeah, that's correct. There's a garbage pickup and kind of shed zone that's located on the east side, and it helps also provide a buffer between that play area and the internal roadway.
Okay, that's okay. So that's what it was then. And then my last question, and it may be maybe picking up on your point, Madam Chair, on the SEPTED. But was there any consideration for, given the amount of trees that are not being restored? I understand there's a cash contribution, but was there any consideration along the lane for there to be a mid shrub layer instead of just turf?
If I may-
Chair, do you mean? Oh, sorry. Do you mean on either side of the connector?
At least the north and west side. Yeah.
I don't believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. If anyone else, if there was discussion, I believe it was just kept sort of a simple treatment with the trees, just to ensure enough width for the fire truck access as needed to not have too much else going on there.
Correct. If I may respond to that also, traditionally, parks has only wanted canopy trees and boulevard grass in those conditions. They've never really had a desire for shrub planting. If parks would like to, we can most definitely provide shrub planting along that edge. Right now, the grass offers a little bit of extra greenery for people kids and whatnot to actually use if they choose to do so, or a shoulder if somebody wants to stand and watch. Could a small hockey game, a street hockey game could be going on, or if a badminton game could be going on. That's the beauty of the grass, is you can actually stand on it. And I'm not going to say there's going to be hundreds and hundreds of people watching you play, but the odd neighbor, if they get together, it gives a little bit of a shoulder for one to use.
Yeah. Okay. I don't disagree. I was just curious if there was any consideration of it, but I do agree with your points raised. That's all I had, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Cooper?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think my comments are pretty positive. I think this is a sensitively designed plan. Just a few questions here. Can someone point out where visitors parking is in the plan?
Yeah, these tan colored areas here.
Okay.
Are visitor parking.
Okay, and given that, can someone also confirm that the convertible units are also accessible from the outside, or without steps going to the front door?
Yeah, that's correct. All of the accesses are at grade for the units, with any internal lifts or stair lifts within the entrance. So everything is at grade through these pedestrian walkways.
Okay. I do notice too that the pedestrian mews, that on one side the front patios are at a raised level, are raised with respect to the ones say on the west side. They're raised with respect to the east. That central pedestrian mews there in the middle. Yeah. So am I reading that properly? There's a couple of steps. Say buildings number 3 and 4, their patios are at a higher elevation than, say, building B and A2 and A4. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Yeah, sorry, I apologize. The convertible units are these green ones here.
Yeah.
And so these ones are all having at grade access to the main entries.
Yeah. Okay. So, and I just my final comments would be is that has there been extensive consultation with fire access and with your code consultants and forming this site plan in terms of fire response points and those issues.
Yes, we have had discussions with the fire department, and that's how we've arrived at this layout and the additional walkway that serves the front of these eastern units.
Okay, so they're okay with parking the fire truck around the amenity area and then reaching southward towards the front doors in the along that pedestrian muse area?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Through the chair, there's actually a fire access plan if that is of interest as well, just to supplement.
No further questions.
Thank you. I appreciate the very thorough presentation and comments, and I do know that there's somebody who is in chamber. So, Mr. Clerk, is there any public to speak on this project?
Yes, Madam Chair, there's a gentleman in the chambers who requested to speak on this item.
Okay, so if the gentleman can come up and please introduce yourself and provide your address, and you can give us all your questions before we get them to answer, or your presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Mark Nielsen. I live at number 8, 10177 Pugwash Place, which is the strata townhouse complex adjacent to the property we're discussing today. Just have a couple of comments and a couple of questions for you. First of all, my comments, I'm delighted to hear about the pedestrian walkway that has been incorporated. It's one of the major ways I get between our complex and number 1 Road and Williams Road corner. So thank you for that. And I'd also like to compliment you on the extensive care that's been taken with regard to preserving the redwood and the Norway spruce, which are wonderful trees. I guess my question is just one of clarification. I understand that out of the 124 replacement trees required, 66 will be replaced, and in lieu of planting, the remaining 50 replacement trees will be done via a voluntary contribution to the city's tree compensation fund. And I was just wondering, I assume that those 58 replacement trees would be planted elsewhere rather than on or near the property. Is that correct?
Ms. Smith, if you could answer. Yeah, thank you.
Through the chair, yes, that is correct. The tree compensation fund, the Parks Department determines where in the city to plant the trees. They do plant on average, I think, around 650 trees a year throughout the city, but it is determined on a basis of where those trees can be accommodated. It can't necessarily be accommodated immediately adjacent to the site, but I believe the effort is made to try and do that where possible.
Okay, thank you very much. And my second question may be one of ignorance, but I've noticed there's been significant site preparation done over the past couple of years on the property. And I was just wondering, is it common to consider development after all that site preparation? I was wondering what would happen if you chose not to develop at this point. Would we just be looking at the compression, the sand compression on the lot for some time to come?
So if I'm understanding you correctly, sir, there's probably some preloading that's already taken place on site. Correct. With sand piles, as you call it. Yes. Ms. Smith, can you clarify when an applicant can start doing preloading, at what point of the process?
Yes, through the chair. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. My screen is frozen at my end, but I won't touch anything.
Oh, I think we just lost you. Yeah, we just lost you, Suzanne.
To the chair, it's Kush. I can possibly answer that question if you like.
Please do, yeah.
Well, as a developer, I can tell you that one of the reasons we go ahead with the preload is because there's a time required for it, and it can vary anywhere between 4 to 7 months. And it's very simply to just try to.
Oh, Suzanne, we still lost you. We can't hear you. So, Kush, please continue. And if Suzanne's feed comes back, we'll let Suzanne continue.
So the reason for the preload is basically trying to save some time so that the development process doesn't get stretched out longer than it needs to be. And yes, you are correct. We do take, it's a financial risk for us, and that if the development doesn't get approved or it needs to be modified, then we're faced with the predicament of having to go back and redo some of the work.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you,
very
Kush.
much.
And I was hoping to have Suzanne confirm. Maybe Edwin, if you are there, if you could confirm if you know Edwin's the planner. I believe the developer are able to start preloading after rezoning process has been approved by council. Is that correct?
To the chair, there is no permit required for preloading, and basically this is the developer's choice on when they start preparing the site for future development.
Okay, so it is at the risk of the developer, but I assume that a developer will not go and clear the site, clear the trees until at the very least they have rezoning, because otherwise it's a huge and unnecessary risk. So thank you. Hopefully Suzanne can join us back soon. At this point in time, sir, if Mr. Nelson, have we responded to all your questions, or do you have any further questions?
And I understand now better the notion of the risk involved in undertaking that preloading in advance of the development. It clarifies my question, and I'm sorry that the question caused your screens to freeze.
No, thank you very much.
That was an unintended consequence. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome, sir. Mr. Clerk, is there any written submissions on this project?
We have no correspondence for this item, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So that leads us to panel deliberation. Oh, hi, Suzanne. Glad for you to join us. Now that Kush has taken the hot seat and answered the questions, and I put Edwin on the hot seat as well, so I think we're good to go. So I guess I'll start the deliberation. I think this is a very sensitively designed project, given the odd site configuration and the need to both continue Cavendish Drive and providing a walkway to the south of the property. So, I compliment the effort that both the developer and the architect and landscape architects have put into the project. So it's really nice to see. I don't really have anything remotely negative to say. So I'll see if my fellow panel members want to add to the comments before we do our vote.
Madam Chair, I agree. It's a very well designed project, and you can see the care and thought that was put into it. I forgot to put my sustainability hat on for a moment, and if I could, one more clarification, maybe just how the heat pumps are going to be, any noise going to be mitigated from those devices.
And if somebody from the architect side can answer, unless Ms. Smith wants to answer on their behalf. Oh, are you trying to speak, Suzanne? You're on mute. No. Maybe David or Tazo, somebody.
We can answer. I can answer that question too. We've did a townhouse project not long ago with similar units. Never received a single complaint. And I can tell you right now, we're actually developing another project in Port Moody where we're using similar units, and they've actually gotten quieter in the last 2 or 3 years since the last project we built. I've never, in these 2 projects, I don't think we've ever received a single complaint about the noise.
Where are they physically located, though?
Let David talk applications.
Thank you, Kush, and through the chair to Mr. Russell. Thanks for the question. Yeah, they're located on the ground floor, and they're located in areas that aren't being used for general enjoyment, outdoor areas. They're removed away from patios and away from sleeping spaces, and so they would typically be closer to garage spaces and the common roadways.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for that. I just wanted to make sure that it was thought through and there's a plan for addressing those issues, and good to hear you having that experience, Kush. So yeah, I think I don't have anything further to add, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And Mr. Cooper?
Yeah, nothing further, Madam Chair.
Okay, so in that case, if the panel provide a positive recommendation, then it will be the next step is for it to go to council. And again, I would mention that there's no opportunity to delegate at council, and just for clarification. So if somebody could move, staff have a positive recommendation. And I think, as I said, I think this is a great project. So if somebody could move the staff recommendation.
So moved.
So I'll consider moved and seconded. Yeah,
Second.
I'll call that into questions. All those in favor? Okay, thank you. Carried then. So thank you everybody for a great project. We look forward to seeing it completed. So work fast, Kush.
Yeah, anxiously waiting for the next step. I'll be very honest with you.
Yes, great. So the only thing, is there any new business, Ms. Smith, to add? Nothing. And the date of the next meeting is still set at August the 23rd? Okay, great. Thank you. So can somebody please move adjournment?
So moved.
Seconded.
Thank you. The considered adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.